than that, but it is trains that are leading the news this morning, because in the last half hour we've had breaking news that Virgin Trains has lost the West Coast Mainline franchise. They've lost it to First Group. The ins and outs of that, we go to the city. Joel Hills will tell us.
Yeah, the West Coast Mainline station, Eamon, carries 31 million passengers a year in the UK. It links Glasgow and London, but also serves very big cities along the way, including Birmingham, Manchester and Liverpool. It is the busiest route in the UK, economically very important. Virgin have been running it since 1997. They think they've done a pretty good job. They bid for the franchise to run it for another 14 years. They have lost to First Group, the highest bidder. It has promised the government £5.5 billion over the next 14 years to run the service. Bear in mind, it just runs the service. It doesn't own the stations or the track. Network Rail maintain that on behalf of the taxpayer, but they think they can do it at a profit, and they're making some very bold promises. They're promising lower ticket fares, they're promising more trains, they're promising a more punctual service, they're promising more services, they're promising the earth on the face of it. Yeah. Virgin was outbid, and spare a thought for Sir Richard Branson, because as of December he has a train company but no trains. Yeah,
he's got a train set, nothing to do with it. But actually, he's not taking this line down. Well, he may well have to, of course. But he's saying he's expressing doubt whether this is actually deliverable from the other company, First Group. He's saying, we didn't want to risk letting everybody down. He's just released this statement, Joel, with almost certain bankruptcy at some time during the franchise has happened to GNER and National Express, who overbid on the East Coast Mainline, and he obviously thinks First Group have paid too much for this.
Yeah, and he's not alone in that. I think the unions certainly were backing the Virgin bid. They didn't want to see First Group win this. The highest bidder is not always the best. That's the point that's being making here. They're making promises they can't deliver. They haven't got the funds or the resources to deliver on the promises that they're making. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, there's toing and froing ahead of the announcement of this decision. The government has clearly decided that First Group is the bid it wants to go for, and it's not just money, it's all about delivering value for money for the taxpayer. Well, we'll wait and see. Passengers, ultimately, will tell us what the service is like. OK, we want to get the reaction from the industry on this one, Joel. Thanks, we'll leave it there. Central London, we've got rail expert Nigel Harris there. What do you make of this, Nigel?
Well, as your correspondent said there, it's such an opaque process. We'll have to wait and see in many ways. We've got two good, strong operators who've both done pretty good jobs. They've had the moments over the years where they've both sort of slipped and tripped, but they've both been good operators. We've got a bidding process where the DfT have gone for the first bid, and we will have to wait and see. But first are emphasising that the dire warnings we're hearing from Virgin and some others about cuts to jobs and cuts to catering and services will not come about. They are absolutely adamant that this is based on growth.
Really? And to be based on growth, that would have to have an effect on price, the service and the standard. I must admit, now that's a service that I would use very often between London and Manchester particularly. What are they going to do to make my journey more pleasurable, do you think? What could they do? What can they do?
Well, they're certainly saying they won't be making it any less pleasurable by either removing the staff or the catering. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do anything about the gentleman you talked about the other day who came and plonked himself next to you in an empty train, but hey, they can't do everything, can they? But certainly north of Birmingham, they're talking about buying new trains, so I think 6 new electric trains, and putting various places back on the intercity network, which actually Virgin removed, places like Shrewsbury and Blackpool. So there are some, and these are commitments, don't forget. They're not sort of airy-fairy promises. These are things that they have to do.
They have to be
£22 million investment in stations and so on.
Yeah.
The big... Sorry.
Sorry, Nigel, I'm just going to say these are things they have to do. It's interesting to hear that. There's a lot of cynicism out there. I'm just looking at the tweets that are coming in today, and a lot of people just don't believe they will deliver. And I suppose rail passengers speak from bitter experience on this front.
Well, the rail fares are always, and rail travel is always a distress purchase for many people. But the fact is, Virgin have done a very good job, as the railway has generally. When Branson took over that franchise, it was a real mess and carrying about 15 million people a year. And I can remember him telling me in about 2002 that for this plan to succeed, they would have to double the passengers to 30 million. And I was really sceptical, and yet they have done it. The railways we've got are a victim of their own success. They've been growing at 5% a year relentlessly through the greatest recession that the world's ever seen. And that does create stresses within the system, given that, railway carriages cost £1.5 million each to buy, and there's lots of people wanting to use them. Striking all those balances is not an easy thing, and sometimes the end result can be very trying for people. But they generally get there in the end.
Yeah, OK, Nigel. We're just going to get reaction now. Thank you very much indeed for your take on things. What are folks saying who are getting in touch with you, Charlotte?
Yeah, Mr. Chris John on Twitter just says, what happens if First fail to deliver? Another one here from Martin says, it's a shame it's repeat of GNER East Coast fiasco, an excellent service ruined by an unrealistic, greedy overbid. And we've also had one in as well from a Virgin Trains employee, Andrew, who says, I'm in total shock at the announcement from the DfT. Virgin Trains changed the way our railways were bringing us into the modern era. From the powers that be, you should hang your heads in shame over what you've done. So he's not happy about it at all.
The Rail Minister, now here's something I don't like. I wouldn't be happy with this. Theresa Villiers is saying the new franchise would deliver big improvements for passengers with more seats. No, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear maybe more carriages. I don't want to hear more seats, because that becomes like airplanes, doesn't it, when everybody's squashed in like sardines.
So we've yet to see the details on this. And also one of the local MPs, Luciana Berger's, just tweeted me to say, I've received lots of emails in the past week from worried constituents. So I guess that's people who are worried what the changes will mean. An awful lot of people use those train services, so it will have a knock-on effect for lots of people if there is a big difference. OK, but it could be a difference for the better. 9th of December is when First Group take over. The jobs of the Virgin staff who work on those train routes are secured by law in that bid. And we'll take your reaction, further reaction throughout the programme this morning. What else have you got, Charlotte? In other news this morning, a major